Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back? Well, we have Hyper Pellets by Prometheus Excite. Okay, so are these things just like all hype or are they actually functional? Well, here's the thing. I've got these in 5.5 grain, 6.4 in 177 cal. These are the wad cutter style. The 6.4s are pointed. And of course the 22 cal ones are like 8.4 grain. Okay, and they have kind of like a rubbery jacket and an alloy head. These have alloy heads and plastic jackets, so they just kind of like pop them together. Anyways, here's the thing. If you think about the speed of your air gun in FPS, and you go and you convert that to miles per hour, okay? Now, with a standard weight pellet, now, whether it's a PAL rated gun or non-PAL, it doesn't really make a difference. However, we'll do both numbers for you. So I have a couple of air guns that'll shoot normal pellets at 497 feet per second. So that's like 338 miles per hour. Okay, so 338.864 if you want to be picky. Now, that's a gun that's rated for under 500 FPS, which all my guns, when I bought them, the boxes say 495 at 500, under or up to 495, up to 460, you get the deal, right? Okay, so let's say you have a gun that's actually rated at, say, 1100 FPS, and it runs at, I don't know, 900 with a 7.4 grain pellet. So that's 613 miles an hour, okay? Now, when you run a Prometheus pellet, say a 5.5 grain, because that's the lightest ones I've ever found in 177 so far. Okay, so 900 feet per second with a standard weight pellet. Let's just rough guess that, and let's just say it does, I don't know, 1,300 feet per second. Okay, just for fun. That's like 886.3636 miles per hour with a hypervelocity round. Now, regardless of what speed it's actually doing in miles per hour, you got to look at the miles per hour part, because you've got something that's got a plastic jacket flipping down your barrel at super high miles per hour. Not just feet per second, but miles per hour. And friction gets caused. And guess what? Plastic, friction against metal. Let me think. Something's going to start melting a little bit, okay? Now, that's going to foul up your barrel pretty good, especially after a lot of rounds. A couple rounds, not a bad thing, you know, no big deal. You know, clean your barrel afterwards. But if you're going to shoot these a lot, you're going to foul your barrel up really bad. And, you know, kind of like burnt, melted plastic is kind of hard to get out of the rifling, let alone the rest of the barrel, okay? Now, this is something that has a high probability of going on, right? In fact, it more than likely will. So, over time, they're going to run slower and slower because you haven't cleaned your barrel, right? But even after 200 rounds of these things, it's definitely starting to clog things up a little bit, right? Now, hypervelocity rounds are not the most accurate rounds either. Even in a non-PAL air gun that normally shoots 495 or 497, even if the air gun shot 500 with a 7.4 or a 14.3, you're still looking at, you know, these things are losing energy, and they're losing distance, and they're losing accuracy. And you have no guarantee that you buy these and they're going to work in your gun, because let's face it, your gun will choose its pellet. Now, it may choose a pointed hyper pellet over a wad cutter hyper pellet. Who knows, really? You know, maybe you need to get into Skenko pellets. But, you know, there's not a lot of different types of hyper rounds out there to begin with. But what is out there is available, and yes, you can shoot them through your gun. I mean, come on. Kids shot nails out of air guns when they were kids. I, however, never did. I had respect for my guns and loaded the proper ammo, as always. Okay? But I have fixed enough air guns for people over the years where their kids shot nails out of them, shot rocks through them. You would be surprised at some of the embedded garbage I found in guns, especially Springer guns, okay? However, either way, people shoot projectiles. Now, these things do lose energy. Okay, even though they make your gun run faster, you have less energy. Why? Because they're super light. Okay, so therefore, you are going to lose energy. To gain back just the same amount of energy as you had in your lead pellet, you got to get these walking out that barrel really super fast, and that's just not going to happen. Okay, not without doing some mods to your gun and jacking it up, right? Now, there are some cases where, you know, the hyper pellet is in, you know, just the kind of a right kind of a gun where, yep, it's definitely going to run super fast and give you at least the same amount of energy. However, you are still going to lose distance because it is a very light round. So it can't retain its energy very well. It may end up with the same amount of energy. It may get a little extra energy, but it is certainly not going to get the same distance because it's going to lose energy faster. The other thing is it's more tended to fly off course. So let's just say you're shooting on a day where there's very little wind, but there is some, right? Shoot your lead pellet out. You're going to hit your target at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards, right? Slam one of these puppies in there. Good luck having any kind of grouping going on. I've done a lot of extensive testing with hyper rounds, and I found them to be literally, honestly, more hype than they are usable myself. Okay. Now you may have a different opinion, and that's fine. Please state that in the comments below. All right. Let me know how you made out with hypervelocity rounds, and if you've tried these ones by Excite, okay, or some other brand, or Skenko. Now there are also full alloy pellets, where the entire pellet is made of an alloy or non-lead. Okay. And these things are not very forgiving. And they do actually and honestly do require a really high-powered air rifle or air pistol in order to fire them out properly. Non-PAL air guns are really not a good suggested thing. I will give you a prime example of this. Where'd I put them? There they are. The monsters. Okay, these are a 13.4 grain lead pellet. These are the JSB Monster Diablo Exacts, redesigned, they say. Okay, these are some pretty chunky 177 pellets. Like, look at these things. They're like, let me see if I can get one in view for you. That's a pretty chunky piece of lead there. And pretty solid too, I might add, because there's really not much of a skirt. It's pretty much all lead. So there's no real forgiveness there. And they are going to fit tight in breeches. I've tried to play with these things in my Springer guns and in my nitro guns, and they just don't have enough power to pop the pellet through the barrel. In fact, you get a and this piston barely can move. Cock the gun, do it again. You know, I mean, you can do that all day long. It ain't coming through that barrel. It just ain't going to happen, right? Pressure systems work a lot different on a Springer or nitro gun than they do on CO2 or pump-up guns. And I found that these things actually will fire out of all my CO2 guns and pump-up guns, right? Because there's a lot more pressure in behind CO2 gas. You know, there's almost 900 pounds of pressure in a CO2 bottle, freshly ignited, okay? And there's probably a little over 1,000 PSI popping through a pump-up pneumatic gun. And of course, then we have our PCP guns as well, which likely these things are also going to fire out of, even if it's a non-PAL gun. Now, they do kind of slug you down. You take almost a 200 FPS drop, which kind of really sucks, but you do get a bit of energy. As far as accuracy goes, well, they're not really that hot when it comes to non-PAL rated air guns. But in PAL rated guns, these things are going to do much better. But I still probably wouldn't shoot these things off through Springers, because the thing with a Springer or a nitro gun, whether it's a PAL rated gun, which is a high powered one or a mid-level powered one or non-PAL, they all share the same sort of thing. If you use too heavy of a pellet, it's going to cause problems with the gun. Okay, if you use too light of a pellet, here's the next thing. Piston slam. Bang! You can damage your gun. In fact, I'll guarantee you will damage your gun running hypervelocity rounds, even through non-PAL rated air guns, because it causes what's called piston slam. Sure, your gun's running really fast, woohoo, right? But the problem is you're causing piston slam. And piston slam happens when there's not enough back pressure being created by the pellet waiting to go out. Okay, so it's basically already traveling down the barrel or already out of the barrel before the piston even finishes its cycle. Now, it can still whop the pellet out of there pretty quick. However, you're damaging your gun. Okay, you can damage the piston, you can damage the seal. I have seen some really nasty things happen to guns, period, when people are using hyper rounds and springers and nitro guns, regardless of being under or over 500 FPS guns, okay? But in the nitro and the springers. Now, in CO2, pump up, and PCP guns, you will not damage these guns whatsoever firing these pellets out, whether they're super heavy or super light. Now, if you do get too heavy of a pellet in that barrel, you probably won't even fire it out. But on too light of a pellet, yeah, it's definitely going to come out of there pretty good. But at least you're not going to damage the gun. But it's going to really suck for accuracy, energy, distance, you know, the whole thing, right? So I think that these hyper pellets are something that I wouldn't recommend unless you're going to use them actually in a CO2 pump up or a pre-charged pneumatic PCP gun. That would be safer as far as the main gun goes, although they still are going to foul your barrel up pretty quick. Alloy pellets have absolutely zero forgiveness, so they may stick, even if they're the same general weight area as your lead pellet, they may stick and jam in there because the skirts can't get any smaller. They just aren't forgiving. They don't want to move. They don't want to meld themselves into the shape and diameter of that barrel properly. You know, when you look at a pellet too, if you look at the head and you look at the skirt, okay, you can measure them both. The heads are always smaller, okay? They really are, right? The skirt's the main back piece. So the pellet kind of hovers in the barrel a bit. When you look at something like a slug, for example, a large percentage of that slug is actually sitting in the rifling of your barrel. Where these things, regular everyday pellets, not a whole lot of that pellet is actually sitting within the rifling of the barrel. There's just enough there to say, I think it's balanced, and it's going to go out of the barrel straight, right? We all know that guns don't shoot straight. We all know that they also don't fly on a flat plane either, okay? They kind of fly on a curve and lob into a target. And until you sight in your gun, they could be going left, they could be going right. It all kind of depends when they get fired out, right? Till you line up your sights and your scope with your ammo. And then, of course, if you have the right ammo for your gun barrel that it likes, then you're going to be able to hit your target without a problem and get really teeny-weeny groupings, you know? Now, I'm a picky person, you guys know that, so I have no acceptance for anything less than a dime size or smaller group when it comes to my shooting, okay? Because I want optimal accuracy out of a gun for two main things. One, targets. Two, pest control and small game hunting. It is extremely important that you have a very accurate shooting gun with the right pellet. And the gun ain't going to be accurate unless it's the right pellet for that gun. Now, here's another little tidbit in case you weren't aware, but you might be too if you followed my channel long enough. Being that your gun chooses the pellet, no two gun barrels are alike. So if you take two of the exact same gun, you take 10 of the exact same gun, the chances of those guns actually being able to run the exact same pellets equally as accurate are very, very slim. Okay, you could get dime size on one barrel, below dime on another. Okay, dime or below by the time you finish tuning it in on one. You could get a nickel size groove. You could get a quarter. Okay, anything that is larger than a dime is, in my books, completely and totally unacceptable for being an accurate shooting pellet through that gun. Okay, so we need to find the right pellet for our gun. And this is why I say these hyper pellets, they're not guaranteed to work in every single air gun out there, okay, and shoot accurately out of every single air gun, because it just can't happen. It's just the laws of physics and the laws of the universe, and you gotta suck it up, buttercups, okay? I mean, it's just the way it is. So, in my opinion, I would say do not use hypervelocity rounds. Don't buy into them. Don't use alloy pellets unless you really, really don't care about your barrel, because those alloy pellets, like I said, they're non-lead, and they can scrape down, and they can actually wear down the rifling in your barrel, okay? Which is actually a fact. They can, and they actually will, over time, wear down the rifling. So this is really not a good thing, right? Although they are available because there are a lot of people who are anti-lead. By the way, did you know where lead actually comes from? The ground, the earth, the planet. All you're doing is redepositing your ammo back in when you miss your target, okay? Now, I have personally shot at a tree, probably about 8,000 rounds into it. I killed the tree. Oh my goodness, I'm a tree killer. Well, you know what? So are woodpeckers, and they've killed more trees in the last hour and a half than I've killed in my entire life, which has only been one tree. Okay? I mean, hello, you know. So, you know, and mankind, we actually kill more trees than you can shake a stick at, literally. Because we build houses, we build this, we build that, we build this, we build that out of wood. Where's wood come from? Trees. Hello. Okay, so I killed one tree, big deal, right? But it was my target where I had to paste my target up to shoot at my target, and that's what I used. It was a tree, you know? And, you know, thousands and thousands of rounds later, the tree died, which is, to me at the time, was no big deal, right? But either way you look at it, guys, you've really got to be very careful about the ammo you decide to throw through your gun. And especially critical when it comes to springers and nitro guns that are non-PAL. Do not put anything lighter than a 7-grain pellet. In fact, some of our Springer guns that are non-PAL, you shouldn't actually run anything below a 10-grain pellet, because otherwise you can cause piston slam. But wait a minute, a 10-grain pellet, why? Well, you need performance. You need enough back pressure that it's going to shoot the pellet out of there. Okay, so instead of running 497 with a 7.4, you're going to run about maybe 460 with a 10 grain. Who cares? You got energy at least, okay? So if you take something like, well, let's do this for you. Let's give you the best possible number, and we'll see how this goes for you. Maybe you'll see what I'm talking about now. So if we have a 7.4 grain pellet, and it's running at, I don't know, let's say 490 feet per second, just for giggles. I don't care what speed it is, but we're going to pick 490 for you non-PAL guys like me. That's 3.95 foot-pounds, or 5.35 joules. Now, if we take something like a 10-grain pellet, which is going to probably knock about 30 feet per second off our gun, so let's say we're down to like 460, okay? That actually increases our energy to 4.7 foot-pounds. We slowed down our gun with a heavier pellet, we increased our energy. That's 6.37 joules, okay, or 4.70 foot-pounds, right on the nose. So it's beneficial to actually use a 10-grain pellet in a gun that's shooting 490s, okay? If it's shooting 490s already, and it's a Springer or nitro gun, it's more beneficial to you to actually run the 10-grain pellet. However, you're going to have to find a lot of 10-grain pellets out there of different brands, head shapes, and so on, and find out which one or ones will actually shoot accurately the most in your gun. Okay, once you find one, there you go. You mark it down on a little chart. Beeman blah 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 runs this pellet at this specific weight. Okay, so let's say it was a 10.34 grain pellet, because I have some of them. Okay, same speed, 460. That's 4.86 foot-pounds. You know, that's actually pretty good foot-pound of energy out of a 177 to at least whack some squirrels and chipmunks. I don't think I'd probably suggest trying a rabbit, though, unless you're, like, you know, like 15 feet away. It's hard to say. You know, I don't know. Never killed a rabbit. But you get the idea, right? So when you're talking 22 caliber air rifles now, okay, let's have a 22 cal air rifle, and we're going to run a 14.3 grain pellet, which is just fine and dandy. Okay, and it's going to be running at 483 feet per second. I know because I have a gun on the wall that does this. All right, so that's 7.41 foot-pounds of energy, or 10.05 joules. Now, what happens when we go and we actually run, I don't know, 20, what's my heaviest pellet here? 22 I've got. Okay, we have 21.14. 21.14. Now, that is definitely going to take some chunky power off our FPS. We're going to be down to something like maybe 420 feet per second. Is this going to go against us? No. It's going to benefit us. 8.28 foot-pounds of energy with a 21.14 grain pellet running at 420 feet per second. Pretty good, I think. Sometimes it pays to shoot a heavier pellet. Actually, my QB78 really likes the 21 grain pellets. They're actually the Barracuda, and these are like a Diablo-style pellet. H&M Barracudas. Let me just get this for you. Actually, no. Are they? I don't think they are Diablo. Maybe they are pointed. I don't know. Let me check. I need to verify. No, you know what? They're actually kind of a sort of a pointed. They're not quite pointy, but they're kind of like a mix between a Diablo and a pointed pellet. Let me just show you guys this on camera. So this is the Barracuda. It kind of looks like a pointed pellet, but it kind of looks like a Diablo or a shuttlecock, we'll say. Okay, so kind of best of both worlds in one. And these are like 21 something grain. My QB loves these things. Okay, great pellets. So if you really want to increase some output, you slow down the gun, but you got a lot of energy pack in there, which means it's going to get some good distance too, because it can hold its energy longer, and it'll still retain a lot of foot-pounds at a longer range than a 14.3 grain pellet will. Okay, so that's 22 minutes of this sort of fun. So the bottom line, guys, hyper pellets are nothing but hype. I would say if you want to use them to see how fast your gun really goes with a hyper pellet in comparison to the normal pellets that do run perfectly well in your gun, great. Shoot a couple through, you know, and do that with every gun in your collection. Have some fun with it. But don't use them on a regular basis because they are definitely going to screw up your barrel. Like we talked about earlier, heat, friction, plastic, steel doesn't mix, okay? It's not a good thing, right? Anyways, if you have any questions as well, comment below. Ask away, and I'll do the very best I can to answer them. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and checking out this video. Yeah, and I think I'm going to try some alloy pellets just for giggles and maybe do a video on that. Just, you know, I don't know which gun I'm going to use. Probably something I don't really care about. But when I can, I'll order in some pure alloy pellets, and we'll compare them to and see what they're actually like and, you know, that sort of thing. And see what happens when they impact a steel target, too. See what kind of damage actually happens to these alloy pellets. But also we're going to check our rifling over really good before and after firing a bunch of rounds through it, just to see if we do actually scrape anything up, which we probably won't do it right away because, you know, it's going to take a bit of time and, you know, a lot of those pellets to, you know, really do some damage. But, you know, we'll see if we can fire them out even out of a Springer or a nitro gun. I've got both calibers in, like, everything. The only thing I'm missing is a PCP gun. Oh, 2. I need 22, and I need 177. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Have fun.